All right, good evening, everyone. We're running a little bit late, and hopefully you won't see too many of us eating up here tonight, but I will call to order the first work session of the Whitefish Community Development Board for January 18th, 2024. And the topic of the work session is to discuss the growth policy update. So I'll turn it over to you, Alan, but first I would like to welcome Mr. Webb and his students from Whitefish High School tonight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chairman Quinnell. I'm Alan Tiefenbach. I'm the long-range planner with the City of Whitefish. I'm the project manager on the growth policy. So just a real quick background on this. This is a community plan. This growth policy is supposed to be representative of the whole Whitefish community. The more participation we get, the better plan that we have at the end. One of the things that we wanted to do was to try to get people involved with the growth policy that are not people that you would typically see involved with the growth policy. So that we had a discussion internally, and we reached out to Whitefish High School, to the faculty, to see if we could get any of the students involved. We contacted Mr. Webb, who is the political science teacher there. We had some discussions probably over a few months, and he had some really, really good ideas. Real quickly, so the class has already ended, and these students are here. They don't have to be here. They volunteered to show up here, so they're not required to do this tonight. But I'll let Wes go more into detail about this. But we wanted to let you get a synopsis of some of the really great ideas that we heard, and to get involvement of our youth that are the ones that are going to be inheriting this plan in 20 years. So these are the people that are going to be our leaders in the future. So with that, Wes, it's all on you.
Good evening, members of the board. Thanks for having us, and want to give a shout out to the planning staff. Really appreciate them. They got more than they bargained for out of me. So it's cool that we're here and doing this. I'm just going to kind of walk you through what the assignment was. We've got a total of 6 students out here tonight, and like Alan said, they're volunteering, and for most of them, this is their first public forum. So super, super cool, excited for them to be able to participate like this and having the courage and gumption to show up on a snow day. Anyway, I'm just gonna walk you through a couple of the slides just to kind of like show you what I pitched to the students to kind of get them to understand what they were getting involved in. For a lot of them, imagining politics is like a big national controversial issue, but in reality, it's just, I try to simplify it down to the ground level. Anytime you have a group of people making decisions together, that's a political moment. And the smallest scale you get, a political institution, is right here, at least a public one. And so kind of putting the growth policy into that perspective and inviting them to participate and have an input into what ends up in there, not just as like a student who's doing a project for their teacher, for their city, but like as a citizen. Almost all of my students are going to turn 18 by the end of the school year, so they're eligible voters by the time they graduate. To get them involved at this stage is like a little bit of a 2 birds with 1 stone. They're just using my classwork to do civics, and here they are. So I tried to situate, kind of like the Russian nesting doll of levels of jurisdiction, taking the federalist relationship from the federal government to the states, and then the state to the counties, and the counties and the state down to the city level. And Whitefish, is one of the 3 incorporated cities, has like political authority. They could pass rules that have the force of law, and what we're doing here is impacting that. And that's what citizenship is made of. So the process for them was essentially to take the task of contributing their vision for what Whitefish should look like in the next 5 to 20 years and turning that into a concrete argumentative essay. We did research in teams. After brainstorming some questions, we took a trip to actually this room and had a presentation from the planning staff, and then they later visited our classroom once papers were kind of in the drafting stage. And we got 2 visits from the Writing Coaches of Montana, which is a not-for-profit organization that like deserves the biggest shout out I can give them, because it's for free. They organize a group of volunteers to come in and give students feedback on their writing. They visited our classes twice, and I've got like 110, 120 students, so it was a monumental effort on their part. And so look them up if you're interested. And finally, we took the papers and their finished product and we turned those into legislative bills in a mock Congress where we simulated the structure of the federal government. So there was like a buy-in for them to actually use that in my class also, but the real thing is happening in this room. And so I just want to give another thanks to the 6 students that actually volunteered to be here. They're going to walk you through each of their ideas kind of one at a time pretty briefly, just so that they're brought to mind, but I'll leave it up to them. And I think, who are we starting with? Isabel, you're up.
So my name is Isabel Cosby, and my paper was called The Whitefish Parking Plague. So basically my proposition was that the growth policy should include an improved parking management plan that both expands the amount of parking available and increases the diversity of parking options in Whitefish. So a couple of the suggestions I put in there, and I know that some of these have been brought up before, was a parking garage on the corner of First and Spokane, because obviously there's an existing parking lot there that could be built up. And then the other thing that I kind of focused on was there's a lack of long-term parking in Whitefish, and that poses some issues for, like, the high school parking lot gets used for people sometimes during school hours, like just parking their cars there. The streets, like Columbia and Summers and all of those, get like filled with cars, and then like the Super One parking lot, since that's one place you can park for a long time, gets like filled up with people just leaving their cars there to like go up the mountain and stuff. And I kind of suggested that Depot Park, those parking spots, could be maybe converted into like just a no overnight parking, but longer term parking option, because it is a snow bus stop, and that would encourage, like, I know a lot of kids would carpool up the mountain, and people would carpool up the mountain, and in general, if there was a place to leave their cars. But like, I know for me, I never know where to leave my car. And yeah, so it will increase the use of the snow bus carpools and decrease traffic and parking lot overcrowding, and it'll improve the ease of parking for employees and consumers, which will cause an overall economic boost for the city. And it will also improve the balance between tourists and locals by increasing the number of tourists visiting the city, but also decreasing the locals' dislike for them, which I think is really important, because that's a thing we're facing a lot right now. But I think a lot of that stems from just like the locals feel like it's too crowded, and I think there's some ways to improve that while actually increasing the number of tourists, which would be good economically, but would make the locals mad. So studies show that parking ease has vast impacts on consumer behavior, which is why improving the amount of parking in Whitefish in close proximity to town for like tourists and stuff would be good. And citizens of Whitefish complain frequently about the lack of parking in town during events and during peak seasons. And locals, I've talked to like lots of kids when I was writing this about like locals get little to no use of like the snow bus and things like that because they don't have anywhere to leave their cars. So overall, by implementing some of these suggestions and improving parking management in Whitefish, the town will see an economic boost and experience a better balance between tourists and locals. Thanks.
Thanks, Isabel. We'll take it into consideration for sure.
Charlotte, you're up.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlotte Lehman, and for my growth policy paper I focused on the housing infrastructure, especially addressing short-term rentals and affordability within the Whitefish area. So for my growth policy, I focused on objectives that create a permanently affordable long-term housing strategy that includes incentives and zoning within the Whitefish area. This will increase the diversity of housing prices within Whitefish, which will create more availability for service and industry workers within Whitefish city limits. So for a lot of my evidence, I focused on other ski towns that have used other strategies, and what I found was a lot of them used several angles to attack the issue because it's a pretty big issue that needs several solutions to work together to create a long-term solution. So the first one I found was Landing Local, which is a nonprofit that they provide grants to homeowners for renting out homes to long-term seasonal service industry workers. This is encouraged is people that own a home to rent to service industry workers versus tourists to balance out the amount of short-term versus long-term rentals. And then a second thing that I focused on was Durango, Colorado, who has implemented some long-term strategies in their own growth policy, such as cap restrictions on the number of properties that can be zoned or designated as short-term. And they have a system where you have to apply to be designated as a short-term rental. So by creating regulations and programs that lead to more manageable and realistic housing markets will help to preserve not only the efficiency of Whitefish economically, but also be inclusive and welcoming in the character that makes it a place that many want to live by offering more people from different economic backgrounds the opportunity to live in Whitefish. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Great ideas.
Hi, my name is Noah Chisholm, and my paper is on the parking policy proposal. So overall, I think that parking is a very large issue facing Whitefish at the moment. I know I work at Lula's, which is a downtown restaurant, and we often get a lot of complaints from both employees and customers about the lack of parking in the area. We've had employees have to, skip out and go move their car a couple times. We've had some issues with that. So I think the growth policy paper, or the growth policy itself, actually, should include provisions to deal with the issue of limited and low regulated parking within Whitefish. Overall, I think if we can increase parking availability and also decrease the congestion within the parking we already have, we could definitely both increase the efficiency of our current parking and also increase the amount of parking to overall just allow more people to come in and allow for ease of access to the downtown area. So businesses such as the Lula's Cafe really cite one of the largest issues facing their customers and employees is parking, just because there's a lot of places where you can't park long term for employees, and then also customers often have trouble finding a parking space in the downtown area just because it fills up really quickly. I've noticed in going to work that the downtown area tends to fill up as early as 9 o'clock in the morning, and then it really doesn't ever empty out until pretty late. Like anytime a parking space opens up, it's gone instantly. Additionally, during the farmer's market during the summer, it becomes necessary to park really, really far away, like 6 to 8 blocks away sometimes, and walk in during a severe parking shortage. You can't really park anywhere downtown. Overall, I think that by utilizing some of our suggested measures to act against the limitations of the current parking setup, Whitefish would gain both an economic boost and an increase in the overall well-being of the locals and downtown employees. Thank you.
Thanks, Noah.
Hello, good evening. I'm Mickey Flint, and my policy paper is called Gray Going Green. So for my policy paper, I focused on green roofs, which in case anyone doesn't know, they're just as a broad definition, they're roofs that are covered with, mostly covered with vegetation. So I believe that the growth policy should install green roofs on as many current and future structures as it possibly can. My evidence for this is that the proposition will impact the city in the following ways, including that it will protect the well-being of our environment, and secondly, it will support the well-being of us as a community. Green roofs have been shown to have many beneficial effects on the environment, including the fact that they lower surrounding temperatures and they improve air quality. Whitefish is pretty rural, so it doesn't really struggle with either of these right now, but thinking in the future, we've got an increasing population and there is the threat of global warming, so through green roofs we can get ahead of this threat. Secondly, for the well-being of the community, green roofs are good for us. They support us physically, they support us mentally, they make us healthy and happy. They are shown, like all plants, to lower heart rates and stress levels. I personally wouldn't have minded seeing a green roof or two on my way here just to lower my own stress levels. I bet I'm not alone in that. So overall, to sum it up, I believe that green roofs will give Whitefish the ability to stand strong against incoming threats and current threats to our environment and to our community. Since you all live here, I'm going to take a wild guess that you guys like wilderness and greenness. So let's help Whitefish be more wild and let's turn it from gray to green. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey.
Hi, my name is Brooke Zatuni, and my policy paper was about creating balance in Whitefish, Montana. So my proposition was the growth policy should consider creating a balance between expensive specialty businesses downtown and more affordable shopping options for essentials. This proposition will impact the city in the following ways. It would create a place where locals can shop that has more affordable items and essentials. It would keep business in Whitefish as well, rather than people going into Kalispell for these essentials, such as clothing, underwear, shoes, etc. And the evidence behind this is I compared the city of Whitefish to Kalispell and Missoula, who both have downtown areas, and it shows that as businesses, like as cities increase in population, businesses also have to increase to support that population. And with that, necessities go up for people as well. So making somewhere that has more affordable businesses would create balance. The cost of rent in Whitefish is also very expensive. I saw that an average of $60,317 was an average space downtown, so which makes sense why the cities has more expensive items in their shops because of the rent. In conclusion, the city of Whitefish obviously is an amazing place. That's why we live here. But the population is increasing rapidly, so we need to create a place where people can shop for necessities. By looking at other cities, it seems to work. And we shouldn't have big box stores because we want Whitefish to have the same feel. So basically having a few simple places where people can shop so they don't have to come down from the mountain, drive an hour all the way to Kalispell would be a great spot for people to come. And local ownership could be in these businesses as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke.
Hello, members of the board. I am Grayson Caius, and I wrote a paper addressing the Whitefish water systems. So my proposition would be to incorporate planning standards that consider, one, how expansion and aging septic systems can affect our waters, and two, strong guidelines to maintain healthy qualities for ecosystems, infrastructure, and the tourist economy. The rationale for this paper is that creating stricter regulations for septic tank usage and fertilizer usage near vital watersheds may help to resolve some of the issues that currently face those systems. Furthermore, expanding regulations to incorporate properties near the Lakeshore Protection Zone, Whitefish River, and its tributaries could offset these issues. Eutrophication, which is the degradation or advancement of a water through the leaching of excess nutrients, is a common problem faced by many other states and regions. And it's something that we've faced here before with Cow Creek. Cow Creek originates from areas north of Whitefish in farm fields, and as a result of nutrient runoff from those regions has experienced some pretty major health issues with the stream. Fortunately, local groups such as our high school's club, Free Flow, have been able to help mitigate some of those issues, but it serves as a strong example of what eutrophication can do to a system. So the eutrophication, as a result of effluent leaching and excess nutrients from septic systems, can deteriorate the health of Whitefish Lake. That's something that the Whitefish Lake Institute has also studied, and they've noted that many of the outdated or aging septic systems in that area have been prone to leaching into the watershed. And while the Lakeshore Protection Zone has regulations in place to offset that issue, they the city of Whitefish does not have jurisdiction over the septic systems themselves. That is left to the county. So there's a bit of an issue gap there. Another issue is that, or another example, sorry, is water such as first tributary of Haskell Creek. It used to be used up until 1975 as one of the 3 tributaries that we use for water from Haskell Creek. Currently, we only use tributaries 2 and 3 because tributary 1 suffered eutrophication as a result of upstream contaminants from stables, I believe it was. And so that area, well, it has recovered, is still not usable because of the threat of that upstream contamination. So first tributary of Haskell Creek and Cow Creek are both excellent examples of what eutrophication can do to a system. By creating these stricter regulations and expanding them to the areas where they originate from, we can help prevent a tragedy of the commons by reducing nutrient leaching in waters around Whitefish.
Thank you, Grayson.
Okay, I'd like to thank the students one more time and the planning staff and the board for having us tonight. I'm pretty psyched this worked out. This is kind of a pilot project, and I think I just think it worked pretty well. So you might see me again. I'm not sure what the push from the city will be next year, but I'm definitely going to have Alan's ear on it by the end of the school year and make a plan. So. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions for the students, feel free to shoot. Otherwise, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Webb. Anybody have questions for the students or for Mr. Webb? I would just like to say thank you. From me, I'm also a high school teacher. I spent a lot of years teaching government myself, and it's one of the reasons wwhy I do what I do for the city. And I've tried to get Mr. Webb up here in some role, but he keeps refusing my offers. I would also like to say that, usually in this room we just have a bunch of adults kind of talking at each other, and it's really refreshing to hear young adults come in and give us their perspective. So I do hope to see some of you once we, at our meetings, as we continue to go through the process. We will have lots of opportunities to provide input on what happens with the growth policy, and I hope to see you or some of your classmates come and let your voices be heard. Thank you. One more time? All right. Okay, Alan, are we moving on? You are all free to leave, yes.
Thanks, Wes. How's that for a win-win? It ended up working out way better than we would have expected, because not only do we have 125 seniors that learned about this, but the parents learned about it. And I know of at least a few students that were freshmen that were aware of this project as well. So we're really excited. Trying to see if I get a screen here. Waiting for my computer to come up. Nope, gotta unplug. Can some or let's see here, what's going on? Oh. No. That's our computer. Wait, there we go. Wait, maybe that's it. Let's see. Huh.
That's your background, so you just have to F8.
That is, though. That's not my background. Oh, it is. Do this one. Just do. Oh, okay, wait a minute. Oh, there we go. Okay. Thanks, Craig. The engineer comes and saves the day. Wes has already warned me that we're going to be doing this some more, so this won't be the first, I hope. All right. Thanks, Wendy. The bag is there, against the wall. Huh? We ready, sir? We ready, sir? All right. Once again, Alan Tiefenbach, Long Range Planner. I'm going to briefly run you through some stuff that I think all of you have already kind of been educated on, but just for the sake of the public or anybody watching on YouTube, I'm going to briefly run through kind of a growth policy one-on-one and then tell you about where we are. Okay, so again, Alan Tiefenbach, Senior Plan or Long Range Planner. Okay, so what is a growth policy? They're called many things in different cities. You can hear comprehensive plan, master plan, community plan. Here in Montana, they call it a growth policy. It's an official public document that's used by cities, towns, and counties, and it's a guide for making decisions, particularly about land use, but it also sets policies and overall goals for a city. I already told you the different names. It used to be something that was sort of optional. If you wanted to have zoning or subdivisions, you had to have a growth policy in Montana. But there's been some recent law that now says you have to do it. There's 10 cities in Montana that are required to do it. It's in any city of more than 5,000 people and a county of greater than 70,000 people have to have a growth policy. Oh, sorry. The state of Montana requires that a growth policy be updated every 5 years. Now, our present growth policy was done in 2007, so that's 17 years old. But we've had other corridor plans that we've worked on, the downtown plan, the US 93 South plan, the Wisconsin plan. So some of these plans are relatively new, and those are technically updates to the growth policy. But what we haven't done is go back to the main growth policy and sort of try to integrate everything into one document that works together. So that's part of what we're doing here, partly trying to update it because it's been 17 years and partly having to meet state law. There's certain requirements for growth policy. I'm not going to read all these to you, but these are what are required by the state law. These are actually not new. Under the previous statute, you are also required to meet these same topics. There are some significant differences between what state law says now and what it said before, and I'll talk about that. There's really two in particular that I think are the real big issues, but I think the thing that's important to note is that even though there's requirements about what a growth policy is in Montana, a comprehensive plan, master plans, community plans, all of which I've written and read many, they're all very similar kind of thing. So some of the requirements that I'll talk about at the end here are sort of new. The way that you do a growth policy, what it actually deals with and how it works, it's all kind of standard and very similar. At the end of the day, one of the most important things I believe, and the thing that people are really concerned about, is the land use map. The state law actually requires a land use map now, and it says that it has to have a land use map with a written description of residential, commercial, mixed industrial, and other categories of land. And this land use map has to be based on what was approved in the growth policy, and it has to show the preferred pattern and distribution of land uses over 20 years. And again, I'll circle back to that, but the 20-year requirement is something that is relatively new. State law, which is called the Montana Land Use Planning Act, says that a city has to make a population projection, and it gives you a few different ways that you can do it over the next 20 years, and that the growth policy has to be set up to be accommodating that population. The other thing that it does is it says that you have to show how housing is going to be accommodated over the next 20 years. We have to make a projection of what our housing needs are, and then we have to show how we're meeting those housing needs. And if we're not meeting those housing needs, we need to show why we're not and what we're doing to remedy that. The zoning map. So it's important that the growth policy is a policy.
Could I interrupt you for just a sec? Since this is a work session, it is a little less formal, so you can ask questions if they come up. We'll try to keep it going, make sure we don't run out of time.
I talk fast and I don't always breathe, so
okay.
Throw something at me.
When you say housing needs over 20 years, does that what does that mean exactly? Does it mean we need this much at this income level, this much at this income level, or we just need this kind of housing? Or
All of
what
the
does it mean?
above.
Okay.
I mean, we're, like, if you remember our housing needs assessment and our roadmap, we're looking at, that's one of the things that Luke will be doing. He's got the most fun job in Whitefish. We are looking at how much housing we need, how many units should be built, how many of them would be affordable. Are we accommodating senior housing? Are we accommodating housing for people with physical challenges? So those are all the things. But the state actually, the requirement the state says, all it says is housing and how those housing needs will be accommodated over the next 20 years.
Okay.
So they don't require us to do that.
Okay.
They just
thank
say
you.
housing.
All right. Thank you.
So a growth policy is a policy document, meaning it's a blueprint or it's a vision or it's kind of like, this is what we want. Yes, sir.
So if the Whitefish does not meet all the housing requirements, say 7 years from now, is there a penalty?
We do not know. That is there. MLUPA, Montana Land Use Planning Act, or Senate Bill 382, was put together very quickly. It's almost a pilot program. It was approved in May. There are quite a few questions that our attorneys have. One of them is, what happens if we don't do this? I don't know. I can tell you in other states, what happens is that if you don't do that, the state does it for you. I don't know if that's the way it's going to work here. We just don't know. Is that it, sir? Okay, so growth policy, like I said, is a policy document. It's a blueprint. It's a vision. It's not really regulatory, although it kind of is more regulatory now because the land use map actually has to say what the land uses that are preferred are, and what happens then is the zoning, that is a regulatory document. So zoning, subdivision regulations, lakeshore regulations, all those regulations are what are used to implement a growth policy. And it is very clear in the new statute that if one of the things you have to do after the growth policy is done is you have to review all of the regulations against the growth policy. And if it all doesn't jive together, then you have to change the regulations to meet the intent of the growth policy. So the first part is doing the growth policy, second part is doing the regulations, but the regulations are the regulatory way to implement a growth policy. So those are allowed uses, setbacks, heights, how much building you can have on a lot. Very regulatory. So far, so good? Under the new Montana law, the local government has emphasized that the time for, this is important, and I'm going to circle back to this. The local government says that the time for public participation and comment is during the process of creating a growth policy or adoption of zoning regulations. So they call it front loading. All of the public participation is supposed to happen on the front end. It's supposed to happen at this time, and we are supposed, as a city, we are supposed to be reaching out and telling the public how they can be involved. They also require a public engagement plan. And that public engagement plan is supposed to indicate how the city will be doing that. We did approve a public engagement plan in June. It's posted on our website. I'll show you shortly where our website is, and that runs through the whole process about how the public could be engaged on this. This is the important part, is once the growth policy or the regulations are approved, then site-specific developments like apartments or office buildings or hotels, those have to be by right permitting. So sort of like any other building permit, they come in for administrative review, and the planning director looks at them, and he has to make the decision about whether or not it's generally in conformance with the regulations. If it is, then he has to approve it. If it's not, then he can deny it. And there's some additional stuff where there is some public comment that is invited. If the planning director, when he's reviewing these projects, he notices that there are impacts that are new or significantly increased than what were anticipated at the time of the growth policy or the regulations, then he can send a notification out on a 15-day notice and seek public comment only on those impacts. So you can't open the whole thing up. That can go back and forth. That process of looking at the impacts and whether or not they've been resolved goes back and forth, and he can ask for whatever I don't want to say whatever, but he can ask for additional information from the applicants until he believes that the impacts are satisfied. When he believes the impacts are satisfied, then he can make the decision on what happens with that project. the important thing to note is that the state statute is very clear that there is no public comment during this period. The only way there's public comment is if there are impacts that are mitigated or there are impacts that are that could be generated. But there is no, it's very clear that it has to be done without a public hearing and without public comment. It actually says that in the statute. Now, there's kind of two exceptions to that. One of them is they can be appealed. We're still working on how this is going to work. We may have a development map that people can look at. Again, this is all stuff kind of at the end of the growth policy that we're still working through. But if, for instance, someone from the public believes that the planning director made a mistake, that he made an error in his judgment of approving or denying a project, then he or she can appeal that to the community development board. And then that decision can be appealed to the city council, and then that decision can be appealed to the district court. Also, an applicant can also appeal a project. But it's very clear in the state statute that the appeals have to be limited to whatever the issue was that's raised on the appeal. So you can't just say, I don't want any apartments across the street from my house. You have to say, I made the example of a red-legged frickle frackle, and there was a nest that was missed, and they didn't catch this nest, it's endangered, and they have to mitigate this. And that has to be what the discussion is about. It can't be about whether or not we want apartments.
So it sounded to me like you basically said there's no more conditional uses in any of our zones.
That's correct.
We have to decide what every zone is allowed to contain, and if it's allowed, it's just allowed. There's no public input on.
So Steve, we can have performance standards in our code, like we have currently for multifamily development, certain things that are currently conditional uses. We have a list of performance standards. We can, embellish those. We can create new ones. So we're allowed to, make things have performance standards where they have to meet certain criteria. But as far as whether or not we can deny them or not, we have to decide where things are going to go. If something's typically allowed in a city, we have to decide that this is the zone we want, these types of things. This is where we want our high density residential. This is where we want our, these types of commercial uses.
Okay.
Yes, conditional uses are basically outlawed by the state.
Okay.
They didn't use that term, but they said you can't do that.
So then once we decide where we want things, then we have to write performance standards that go along with.
Correct.
those
We
things
have
that
to write
then-
very good regulations.
Okay, and then the zoning administrator is the only person that has a say unless a citizen appeals it?
I mean, basically, it's just like a building permit where we review it. Does it meet the criteria? Yes or no? If it does, then it gets approved.
Well, building permits are a little more technical.
Well, I mean,
then-
specifically, but from a zoning perspective, we also review every building permit. Are the setbacks being met? Is the building height being met? Is the use allowed? There's a lot of things that we look at for every building permit. It'd be similarly where we're not necessarily looking at the use, but it still has to meet, we have certain things that have performance standards that don't require a conditional use permit. And in those things, we look at that. We have landscaping requirements. We have parking requirements. We have sign codes. We have dark sky ordinance. We look at all those.
I get that. I get all those things. Those are,
And subdivisions the same way.
those are less subjective.
If
and
something's in a district that allows that density and the subdivision is proposing something that meets that density, then it's basically going to be approved.
I guess the thing I would add to that is, basically you're right. The conditional use process has gone away, and it would have to be performance standards based on the zoning. One of the things I think we're going to have to look at, one of the things that I'm doing right now as a process is I've had to review all of our zoning. So I've looked at all of our zoning, what the development standards are and what the uses are. Right now in the city of Whitefish, we have 200 different defined uses. So we have, for instance, candy shop, caterer, and ice cream store as separate uses in our zoning code. So I don't know what the difference is between a candy shop and an ice cream store.
It sounds like you have a problem with that, Alan.
So I'm saying we have 200 different. My job is to follow what the council tells me to do. I was perplexed with what I call hyper-Euclidean zoning. We have 200 different uses. I don't know if we'll be able to go that route anymore. I think it'll have to be more like large-scale retail, small-scale retail, medium-scale retail, drive-through establishments, and not.
All right. Let's not get too down in the weeds on that.
Don't
sorry.
want to go down
I
that rabbit hole
interrupted you.
yet.
Yeah.
Trust
okay.
me, you'll have plenty of time to pound me on that one.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I just wanted to emphasize that because it's important to know that this process has to be front-loaded by our state statute, and then after that, it's administrative. Because this is a gargantuan project with pretty small staff, we are doing everything that we can to reach out. And what we did was we casted the widest web that we could. We sent out 10,000 postcards to everybody within 59937. We put flyers in every utility bill. We put out press releases. We went on nonstop local. And we told everybody that, hey, we're having this growth policy kickoff meeting, and this is what it's going to be. If you want to know about this, if you want to participate, you need to show up to this, or here are ways you can be involved. And then we put together this engagement site, which if you're not on, you should be. It's called www.engagewhitefish.com. If you subscribe to that site, anytime there's any new updates, I will give you a newsletter, and there'll be tons of stuff posted on here, and it's sort of an interactive site. You haven't seen everything happening yet because we haven't really started, but there's maps that you'll be able to comment on. There'll be forums. There'll be all kinds of different things as we move forward. We'll post stuff, and you'll be able to comment on it underneath it and mark things and all that stuff. So it's getting there. We're just not there yet. And I already mentioned this, but it's a mandated administrative process. It's very clear. It says no public hearings or public comment. Okay, so here's where we are at so far, AKA what have I done here at Whitefish. Okay, so the first thing we did is we created a timeline for this project. We did a mapping of all the existing conditions in the city limits. What that means is that I walked every street in this city and mapped what use was on that parcel for every single parcel in the city and built a model, okay? Now, I am working on the existing conditions of the entire planning area. So there's a bigger planning area than Whitefish. It's in process. I'm not going to go to every single property on this one. It's too big, and because there's so much of it is just residential, that I'm really, the parts where I'll be physically going out there is on the corridors, like 93, and areas where I know that there's other types of uses other than rural type properties. But for the city of Whitefish, because there's so many different types of uses all over the place, I wanted to get it right. So it's very exact. We now have a really good model, which you may or may not have seen yet, but there's a ton of crazy amount of analysis that we can already do. We have written and adopted a public engagement plan. We are already well through the process right now of looking at analyzing how our zoning, our land use plans, and the existing conditions all come together. That's not something you've seen yet. In fact, it's not something most of internal staff has seen yet, but it is coming. It's basically analyzing everything to make sure it works, but we can't really finalize everything until the growth policy is done. But we need to know going into it what the conflicts are. We have selected a growth policy title, which is Vision Whitefish 2045. We have sent out solicitation for cover art, which we're going to talk about next. We had a kickoff meeting, which had 125 people in attendance and many online. It was very well attended. Super excited about that. As I just showed you, we have developed and launched a website, engagewhitefish.com. We have already started putting together the general framework, so basically the outline of how it's going to read. As you just saw, we've reached out to Whitefish High School to get the students involved so we can start getting more of our youth involved in the growth policy. The way that the state statute reads now, a growth policy almost requires a build-out analysis. There's like a lot of data that's required, and then at the end of all this data, there are land use maps that show what types of uses are supported in what areas. So we have already started hiring some consultants for some of this stuff. For instance, I am not an economic development expert, a marketing expert. We have an economic development consultant that is working on that. It's one of the requirements. It says that they have to project over the next 20 years job opportunities, new types of emerging businesses. Is the infrastructure sufficient to support those businesses? All stuff with the growth policy. It's important to note to you that these consultants, they've been working on this. Economic development consultants have been working on this for a few months. They've already had interviews and already have come into town to do this. They're going to be coming back on February 6th. February 6th at 1:30, there's going to be a meeting here in this room that I would love to see some of you here, and the economic consultants will be telling us what their findings are, what they have determined from all this analysis and doing all these interviews and talking with the local business community. I'm going to take a breath. Any questions so far?
Just a little worried about our time because I do want to take some public comment too.
Yep.
So
I can wrap it up quickly here.
okay.
We also have somebody doing a groundwater study, and Craig may or may not mention, we're also working on infrastructure plans because those are also old. We've already started writing sections of the plan, stuff like background settings, climate, those kinds of things. Eventually, those will emerge. I mean, there's nothing, well, who knows? The sky's blue, no, the sky's red. I wouldn't think it's controversial, but who knows? But those are basic background existing conditions that will eventually come out into the public realm. We've had 5 planning board work sessions and 2 city council sessions. All right, I'm just going to shoot through here. So the next process is visioning. And this is where a community forms a mental picture of the future it wants. It happens early in the process, and it's to recognize what the values are, what makes us special. Most comprehensive plans have some kind of general vision statement. Often they will have a very general one, and then they'll have like specific vision statements for transportation, land use, environment kind of thing. I took an example. Our vision statement is kind of a general one and specific ones all in one statement at the beginning of the growth policy. But this is kind of an example of a general growth policy statement. This is our existing statement. Then there's, in the same statement in our growth policy, there are some more specific statements. And here is sort of a vision statement in regard to economic development. So whether they're all in the same section of the book or whether like each new element, each chapter has this vision statement setting that. The vision statement is kind of saying, this is what we want, this is what we're thinking, this is what we don't want kind of thing. There is going to be visioning sessions. They're going to be general visioning sessions. I already told you what the purpose of it is. The first half of it's going to be basically a series of questions. The second half of it is going to be some mapping exercises that people will work on. It's possible, depending on how much time we have, that the existing visioning statement will be discussed. There's going to be a lot of visioning sessions. This one's the very general 20,000 foot, come up with a general idea of what Whitefish is statement. We have 4 potential dates for that. All 4 of them fall in the last 2 weeks of February. We are looking to you to see whether you think we should take 2 in a row, or they don't have to be 2 in a row, but we're doing 2 of exactly the same visioning. Just because some people might not be able to be there on Thursday, some people can only be there on Wednesday. So they're identical sessions on 2 days out of February. But because you are technically the entity prepared to develop this growth policy, we're really hoping for a commitment from you to show up to one or both of these, and we'll help walk you through this. But nothing else, some FaceTime and to help maybe facilitate some tables. So that's the first thing that I will be asking for tonight, and I'll put that at the end of the recommendations, or what are the dates. The second thing is, if you remember a couple of months ago, we have been asking about cover art, and we got a few really good submissions. This one was the one that the planning board mostly liked. They really liked the work. The comment they had is all of the houses felt too much like too many apartments or too many, like a monopoly thing, and they really kind of wanted to see some more diversity in the type of houses. This is almost free, right? The artist is not charging us much. They're basically doing this for free. She was nice enough. I said, well, they really like your art. They're just not quite there with the houses. Can you give us some other alternatives? And boy, she did. So she gave us 2. There's one on the left and one on the right. But the other thing that I am asking for from you this evening is to choose one of these to be the official Whitefish Vision Whitefish 2045 cover, which will also be on the banner, stuff like that. So with that, I can go back to these dates if you want to talk about this first, and then I can go to the artwork if you want to talk about that, or I'll stand for questions.
I think just in the spirit of letting the public have their say tonight, we should go to public comment, and then we can debate, we can put off those decision-making pieces to the end of our regular meeting, kind of like what we do at City Council, if that's all right with you. Unless you were just planning on not staying for the rest of the meeting. It's a short agenda tonight. Is that okay with the rest of the board, that we make these decisions later so we have enough time to talk, and I still want to leave some time for public comment? Okay. So you're looking for two things on vision, or 2 things from us tonight, and we'll get to those at the end of the regular meeting. Okay, great. At this point then, I'll open up the mic for public comment.
Good evening, Giuseppe Caltabiano, 2075 Lion Mountain Loop Road. I have 4 quick points. Number 1, wanted to welcome and thank the newly formed Whitefish Community Development Board. Thank each and every volunteer who's going to spend, some of you have already been spending time sitting on that bench. We'll be spending hours in such a crucial phase of our community. So thank you and welcome. Number 2, I'd like to recognize and compliment Alan and his team. I hope you have a team, if not his team of 1.5. If you haven't seen all the products he mentioned that have been executed upon, I invite you all to go and see the interactive map of all the uses and the projections. It's pretty rocket science. And he also came to the Rotary Club to try to outreach and give a presentation there. So thank you, Alan. By the way, Alan's previous dog is worldwide famous. You should ask him about Baxter offline. Number 3, I wanted to recognize the work that the economic development consultants have been doing. I've attended a couple of meetings here, and they also reached out to me, and we had a couple of hours interview, 101 on Zoom. So that's a good asset, I think, and they seem to be listening and confronting us with good economic-related ideas. And lastly, but not leastly, we keep saying, thank God we had the young people here, but 2045, these people are going to be 40 years old. So it's very important that the youth of today, the mature people of tomorrow, that will be 40 years old, are more and more engaged, because 2045 is not going to be my town. It's going to be those people's town. So keep that in mind when we try to think about what we're doing. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Richard, you're here. Nathan? No? Speak now, or? Okay.
I wasn't going to speak. Richard Hillner, 104 5th Street, Whitefish. But to Alan's description of work in progress, and maybe it's just because I'm older than some. I'm having a little bit of trouble finding some of those maps, those interactive and pieces, and maybe I just need a tutorial. But I think the more that we can get out in front of the public on a regular basis with notifications, even though I've signed up, I don't seem to be getting notifications. Maybe there haven't been any, but I think that's critical to engaging, and engagement is what's going to make this thing happen, because the critical nature of it, assuming that it doesn't fall to a legal challenge, the idea that the public will not have that final say as we do now, and I find that perplexing, to say the least. Thanks.
Thanks, Richard. A couple things. I think we're redoing the growth policy either way, because it's as Alan mentioned, the last time we did the full thing was in 2007. So, and then do you want to speak to the other stuff, Alan?
Richard, did you get the January newsletter? You have not gotten a newsletter. I'll have to look at that. So I've been sending out newsletters every month. That's really what I've been updating on. I don't know why you didn't get one. I'll have to look and see how you registered. I thought I sent it to 480 people, so I'm not sure why. Did you get the January? So the January newsletter did have this meeting announced in it. So if you guys are getting the newsletters, I don't know what's happening. Well, no, I don't understand why it's happening. I mean, I'm hoping other people. Nathan, you're signed up, right? Did you get the January newsletter? I mean, I can't do anything about a spam box, but if you're getting, but right now, because it's right now, and I didn't even really commit to monthly newsletters. I've just kind of been doing them. And, we may not be doing them every month, but right now I've been updating every month everything that's going on. So if you've been getting those are the alerts, and it did have this meeting. when we have some specific things, like if and when the artwork gets chosen, and if and when we have the visioning, if it comes before like the regular newsletter, I'll send out a special alert and say, here's the stuff that's going on. But I have been doing that. I'm not sure, Richard.
Okay. Thanks, Alan. I think the other part of the other answer to your question, if I understood you right, is that maps and things are coming on the website sooner or soon, or as we hit those points of the growth policy.
Yeah.
Correct?
So if you go on the growth policy, go under documents. There's maps under there right now. All the any maps that I've displayed at these meetings, but the interactive maps aren't up there yet. There's going to be widgets where like you can put pins on a map and make your comments on areas. Oh, that's not happening yet. A lot of that interactive stuff hasn't happened yet. It's when we start moving into the visioning and do that stuff. Like I think when the visioning comes up in February, we'll probably have some maps to say, what are your favorite landmarks here? Put a pin, say why you like it, that kind of stuff. You'll see that.
Okay. Any other questions or comments at this point? We have 2 minutes, or well, just about a minute until our regularly scheduled meeting is supposed to happen. Okay, then we'll adjourn the work session, and we will start the meeting in about a minute. So you have a short break here, and then we will start our regular meeting.
Now the planning board is now called. For the intro or whatever? Yeah, this is the community development, but it's not a growth policy work session. Okay. This is the public hearing. Public hearing.
Plug in and make sure it's all good to go. I'll let Jake know Hey Jake. These guys are gonna do a little. Okay.
How about that guy right there?
Ow, you started it. Okay.
Go.
Did it go in?
Perfect.
Yeah, yeah.
Shot here. It's got to see my
Don't have
face.
any bad pictures there.
Yeah. Cool.
It's working? Good, good.
Okay.
Oh, there's my favorite picture. I love that picture. I remember you saying
I
that.
know. I keep putting it on.
I know. I love that
Yeah.
picture.
Okay, the big hand is on the 12, so we will call to order the regular meeting of the Whitefish Community Development Board, January 18th, 2024, and our inaugural meeting of the Whitefish Community Development Board. Bree, can you do a roll call, please?
So I just want to make sure I do this right. So just starting with Whitney. Okay. So Whitney Beckham.
Here.
Okay. And Phil Bolin.
Here.
This one. John Heberling. Here. John Middleton. Present. Steve Quinnell.
Here.
Scott Worster.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Bree. And we will move on to our first item on the agenda tonight is board appointments. So we have, we will be selecting board chair, board vice chair, appointment to the Lakeshore Committee, and then the approval of our rules and procedures. So the first one is the board chair. Do we have a nomination?
I nominate Steve Quinnell.
Okay, thank you. It's nominated and seconded. Any other nominations? Okay. Oh, any discussion? I will accept, by the way. Okay, those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. I'm happy to serve as the chair again for another term. And then we have the vice chair is the second one.
I'd like to nominate Whitney Beckham.
And I will second that one. Any other nominations? Okay, Whitney, do you accept the nomination?
Accept.
Okay. Any further discussion? I would just like to say that Whitney has been with us for a long time here on the, or this is all our first meeting on the Community Development Board, but Whitney has served faithfully on the Planning Board for a number of years now, who knows how many, more than we probably all want to admit. And you've done a great job, so thank you. It'll be nice to have you as vice chair. Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay? And that passes unanimously. Appointment to the Whitefish Lakeshore Committee is the next item on the agenda. Do we have an appointment nomination for that? Toby has said that he would happily serve, so I will nominate him for that.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any discussion about that? Okay, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. And that one passes unanimously. And then approval of our Community Development Board rules and procedures.
Make a motion to approve of the Community Development Board rules and procedures.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion about that? Yeah, I heard that you all had a wonderful training. I couldn't make any of those times, I'm sorry. So, all right, those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And that passes unanimously. So on to our next item on the agenda is agenda changes. We don't have any minutes from our last meeting because this is our first meeting. The next item on the agenda is communications from the public for items not on the agenda. If you're here to speak on one of the two items we have on the agenda tonight, I would ask that you hold those. Anybody want to speak about anything not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to unfinished business, which there is none, which will move us right to our public hearings. We had a withdrawn item on the agenda for the what would have been the Board of Adjustment. So we will not be seeing that one. And then we do have a PUD, WPUD 23-03 request by Housing Whitefish for residential land unit development for an 18-unit multifamily development in one building. And this is Wendy.
Yeah. All right. Good evening. So attached, you have a request from Housing Whitefish for a PUD to develop 18 apartments in one building on .690 acres. And this is phase 2 of the Alpenglow Apartments. Alpenglow 1 was approved by the City Council in 2019. Phase 1 is 38 rental apartments in 3 buildings. This project received occupancy in 2021, so folks are living there. Homeward was the applicant, and they were awarded a low-income housing tax credit by the Montana Board of Housing in 2018. This project provides rentals for folks in our area of 60% or less of area median income. The original PUD did overlay these 2 parcels, but it was always anticipated that a future PUD application would come before you in the City Council to identify the exact design and layout. At that time, they thought, possibly 14 units, but again, no design work was done. Phase 1 did receive some zoning deviations, including a reduction to off-street parking at a ratio of 1.5 spaces per unit, building height of 43 for building 3, which is the one to the back of the phase 1, and a reduced side yard setback for buildings 1 and 2. So the current request is for a residential PUD. The building is an L-shaped, and they have a site plan up there for you folks to look at. Located kind of in the eastern part of the project, and then parking is located to the north of the building along the alley. The density is about 29 dwelling units per acre. 2 of the units will meet the Legacy Home Program, which serves an area median income of 60 to 80% area median income, and the remaining 16 units will serve up to 120%. All the units will be deed restricted. Access to the site is proposed off of Edgewood Place, which is shared with the phase 1 of Alpenglow, and then also all the way through to Woodland Place, which is the alley that runs east-west to the north of the project. There's no right-of-way improvements for this particular project. The units will be served by an internal parking lot. There's sidewalks located within the parking lot that connect to the phase 1, which goes out to all the public sidewalks and trails. They're proposing 21 parking spaces with a ratio of 1 space per unit. 3 of those 21 spaces are located within phase 1 that they're removing in order to get access into their parking lot, and so they're replacing them within their own parking lot. Overall, the entire site has 75 parking spaces, which is about 1 1/3 parking space per unit. The applicant is working with phase 1, so all parking across the entire project would be available for all residents, which would be ideal. Open space areas are located to the north of the L-shaped building in the amount of 21% of the project, and a little bit to the east of the building, so it's a little more than 5,000 square feet. Again, the applicant is working with phase 1, so because there's some other open space areas like a little playground that hopefully they can all share and work together on that. They are asking for 3 zoning deviations, 1 to off-street parking, so it's 1 space per unit. They're asking for a reduction in parking lot landscaping. You'll recall we got a new landscaping chapter just this last summer, and it requires a landscaping island for every 10 parking spaces. That's being met on the north side of the parking lot, but on the south side, they have 11 parking spaces in a row, and so they're asking to reduce that by 183 square feet of landscaping. According to the application, if they had to do the 1 landscaping space, they'd end up losing 2 rental units. So that's one of the deviations they're asking for. The final deviation is a reduction in the side yard setback from 15 feet to 10 feet. And that's only in a couple of spots on the building. It's not the entire building. There's just kind of some areas that bump out where they are requesting a 10-foot setback. So this is similar to phase 1. In exchange for those zoning deviations, 100% of the rental units will be deed restricted for affordability. Again, 2 of them will meet the 60 to 80% area median income, and the other ones will serve a population up to 120% of area median income. Because they are volunteering to provide some affordable housing units when they aren't required to, they are eligible for zoning incentives, and one of the ones that they are intending to use is the one where it allows a building to go up to 40 feet, an additional 5 feet. They're not going to use that full 5 feet. Just portions of the building will go up to 38 feet 2 inches, but that's one of the incentives that they're authorized under the zoning. The property is located at 530 Edgewood Place. It is currently undeveloped and zoned WR4. It is surrounded by residential and commercial uses. It has access to all public services and facilities. We did notice adjacent landowners, email advisory agencies. We posted it on the city webpage and put a legal in the paper. We did receive 2 comments in support of the project. We do review PUDs according to the criteria in the zoning regulations. There's no environmentally sensitive areas. This is an infill project. There's no crucial wildlife habitat. Again, it's an infill project. They are providing open space that meets our PUD standards, which usually a PUD is required to provide 30%. Because it's an affordable housing project, they can provide 20%. And they are in a great location to take advantage of all the neighborhood parks, Sir Optimus Park, City Beach, and the trails and such. As far as the character and quality of the existing neighborhood, there's a lot of multifamily kind of buildings surrounding this particular project, and they're kind of playing off the having the larger buildings towards the back. There's smaller buildings in the front with phase 1, and it is located adjacent to other larger type buildings. This neighborhood is a transition between single family and multifamily. This kind of is a transition between the commercial areas in Wisconsin Avenue and the more single family toward the west. Back in 2018, the applicant at the time hosted neighborhood meetings and received feedback from the neighborhood, and that's kind of how they designed the project. Recently, the applicant has been communicating with the commercial businesses that are out there, as well as the phase 1 Alpenglow folks, so they know what's coming forward. And then this property has been slated for multifamily since 2018. No street improvements need to be made with this project. Again, this project, or Edgewood Place, was updated back in like 2002, 2003. It has sidewalks and street trees and all that good stuff. With phase 1, when they did a TIS, that recommended limiting the alley access to one-way heading east. And so they put some signs on the Wisconsin end saying no turning into that alley. And those signs did get installed. No TIS is required for this project because it doesn't generate more than 200 trips. Again, there's no streetscape that's going to be done because it was all done a number of years ago. No improvements are made to the alley either. They are providing sidewalks within the development that connect to the outer edges of the project so folks can use the sidewalks and trails in the neighborhood. Again, this project is well located to take advantage of transportation alternatives, including the trails and the snow bus stop at the O'Shaughnessy Center is one of the closest for public transit. They're not taking advantage of any density bonuses through the PUD, but they are providing 100% affordable housing. The property has a growth policy designation of high density. It was always anticipated that multifamily workforce housing would be built here as part of the 2018 Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan. And it was identified as a key development site, and again, for workforce housing, just because it's a suitable location. We reviewed it according to the multifamily development standards, and all those are being met. And then again, in exchange for the 3 zoning deviations, they are providing 100% affordable housing. We think that they've demonstrated clear community benefit to deviate from those adopted standards. Again, our 2022 housing needs assessment identifies 820 rental units needed by 2030, 75% of which are priced below market rate. So this is going to go a ways in kind of addressing some of those issues. So we are recommending approval of this project and recommending that the deviations be granted, subject to 11 conditions of approval. Just to hit a few of the highlights, this was a former mobile home park, and so if there's any water service lines in the development, those do need to be abandoned per public works standards. The site and buildings all need to meet fire department requirements. There are refuse disposal and recycling areas in the site, but as you saw probably on some of those pictures, currently they're not screened. So there's like screening structures, but the garbage is not being screened. So we would ask them to, work with the Republic Services and get those garbage canisters screened. They need to provide a location for snow storage, and before they submit a building permit, we ask that they get ARC review, final acceptance of all their engineering. A sewer easement on the eastern edge of the property needs to be recorded. They need to review their landscaping, submit a landscaping plan with their building permit, provide 5 bicycle parking spaces, and entered into deed restrictions for all of the units. Can I answer any questions for you?
Questions for Wendy? Go ahead, Scott.
I have one. When you're talking about 60% of the median income, what are those actual numbers? Do you know? I'm just curious.
You know? I don't think I have that on me. Oh, okay. The applicant is going to have that information for you.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't think to bring that.
Any other questions? Yeah, John.
Well, I was concerned about trees. The area doesn't have sufficient trees in my view. And I was going to propose a condition that 10 trees be planted, but I called Wendy and she said based on the amount of open space, 11 trees will need to be planted.
At a minimum.
So I guess my only concern is there any way that this could be waived further down the road? Can you guarantee we'll get 11 trees?
I think you'll end up getting more trees than 11. Okay. 11 at a minimum. But I mean, they'd have to show there's some super unusual reason why they can't meet the landscaping chapter, and they would have to make a case to Dave, the zoning administrator, because there is a provision in the landscaping code where, you know, maybe you can meet the landscaping chapter in a different way, or there's some unusual circumstances, but I don't know what those circumstances would be in this particular case.
Okay.
Don't we have something new in the landscaping chapter too, that they have to make sure that they live too, right? I thought there was something, if I remember it correctly.
Alan Tiefenbach. Off the top of my head, there's something about maintenance, and it's like a zoning enforcement issue, but I can't quote it exactly right now. But it does say, there is something in the zoning code that has something about that.
Yeah, yeah, it is addressed, yeah. Go ahead, John. More questions?
Well, I don't know if this is the right time, but I was curious about what the rents may be at the property.
I think Daniel will probably take care of a lot of that stuff for us.
Okay.
He's the applicant. Any other questions? Just one quick question. Did you say that Alpenglow 1, the average is 60% AMI?
It's less than 60%. Those are the restrictions with that low-income housing tax credit.
Okay, so it has to be less than 60%. Okay, thank you. All right, we will open up the public hearing and we'll hear from the applicant first.
All right, thank you. My name is Daniel Sitter. I'm the Executive Director of Housing Whitefish. We're really excited to be here today to present this project. You got a great overview from Wendy. I'll just provide a little brief background from our perspective, share our project goals, and a little bit about our timeline. So, as Wendy mentioned, Homeward and the Housing Authority developed the first phase as a tax credit project. It really is serving low and extremely low income households. One of our goals, and I know we're going with the standards for the legacy homes, so 2 units being between 60 and 80%. Really, our goal is for the average across the whole project is going to be 80% of the median income. So that really looks like a range of serving households 60 to 100. So our goal is to be a little bit lower and kind of be that bridge of affordability, if you will. Folks that are making a little bit too much to be in some of the low and extremely low income households and apartments, be a little bit step up there. So just for John, your question there about what is the median income. For one person, the 100% median income is $58,800. And then essentially you add $8,400 per person in the household going up. So that's 100%. So we'll be serving households essentially lower than that. And then the way that we determine rent for those is 30% of somebody's income. Whatever those calculations are for, kind of going through that. So that's kind of the marker for affordability, is that folks aren't paying more than 30% of their income towards housing-related expenses. So that's kind of the standard that we use when we're looking at the rents. So Housing Whitefish, that's our goal for this project. we do have a really good relationship, and we're working with Homeward on having those agreements so that we can have parking across both, having the shared use, and even having a property manager that we can have for both. Well, we might probably have a different name because it's going to be different ownership. The Housing Authority currently owns this little piece of property, and you'll see that they're the owner, but they will be transferring that property over to us. We'll be setting a closing date here in probably April. So we'll have full control of that property, and we'll be the owner developer for that. So overall goals for this, as I said, kind of serving between 60 and up to 120% AMI if we need to help make up for some of the income for the project. Using a source of public and private funds to help build this, building a really high quality and beautiful building. I think it looks really great. That fosters a sense of home and community. And then also looking at energy efficiency and really matching and looking good with the surrounding community and those other buildings there. And then optimizing land use. This is something that's really important to our board, is taking advantage. This is a small site. And so the one-to-one parking, this is how we can get the most units, given the kind of standards that we have right now. So we are working, and we do have a good relationship with Homeward, and are confident that we'll be able to share parking and have an agreement there. So just kind of high level next steps for us. We still have a long ways to go to getting the full funding for this. We have been approved for a loan from the state for the Cold Trust multifamily, which is really great. But we still have a little bit of a gap to fill in. So we're going to be doing a lot of fundraising this year and making sure that we can fill that gap and get this project built. And just kind of looked at the walk score, walkability for this site. It's the 74 out of 100 for a walkability and 78 out of 100 for a bike score. So compared to some of the other sites around town, that's really pretty good for our community. So that's the project. We're really excited to bring this forward and have a lot of folks that are behind us and supporting us. So happy to answer any questions that you guys have.
Thanks, Daniel. Any questions for Daniel?
I think I heard 60 to 80% AMI at the beginning of your presentation.
So with the legacy homes, we'll be required, if you will, to have 2. Our goal is really we'll have 18 units. We'll have 6. The way that we've built out our pro forma and our income projections is 6 of the units will be serving households at 60%, 6 will be at 80, and then 6 are at 95% AMI. So that's kind of the range that works for some of the fundraising and the funding that we're looking at. So by going with the higher standard, that gives us just a little bit more flexibility. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Daniel? We're letting you off easy tonight, Daniel.
Awesome. We have our project team here that will dive in a little bit more on the actual site and the building.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can get this to work. Okay. Brandon Tice with Civil Solutions. I'm the civil engineer on this project, and I got a site plan up here for you. I'll just kind of go through the nuts and bolts of the civil engineering on this job, the utilities, the layout, access, things like that. Our main access on this project will be an ingress-egress two-way access off of the existing Phase 1 parking lot, which will allow folks to come and go to the new parking lot and access Edgewood to the south. They'll also be able to come in from the west on Woodland Place, on that one-way alley that Wendy spoke to come in that way. And then they can also leave that way as well. At the northeastern corner of our site, we've got a road that kind of curves out to the northeast, and we put that in so that we would have a secondary way for folks to come out of the parking lot. But most importantly, that gives the fire department a real clean way to come into the site from the south and then leave to the north. So we worked with Travis with the fire department to develop that
that egress route. Moving on to fire and water. The phase 1 development, they stubbed out an 8-inch water main to this site. So we're just gonna hook onto that water main and bring it through the center of our parking lot and then turn it north to Woodland Place and place a hydrant there. That water main will also serve the building with a fire service, because the building will be sprinklered, and then domestic water. We'll also place a 20-foot easement along that water line for public works so they can maintain it in the future. Let's see, sanitary sewer. There's an existing sewer main that runs along the eastern edge of the property. Kind of goes through that rectangular green hatch on the site plan. And that sewer main does not have an easement right now for it, so we'll be granting an easement to the city for that sewer main. We'll also be connecting our building into that sewer main. So we're gonna get some sewer tapes from the city to kind of look at the condition of that main, make sure it's in good shape. But the ultimate goal is to use that main and then also give an easement to the city so that they have ownership of it. Stormwater. The phase 1 development did a really good job of thinking about this phase. So they stubbed out a storm main to this project, to this site, and they also provided the stormwater storage, flow control, and water quality treatment for this site as well, as long as we stick to some certain parameters for impervious area that they identified in their design report. And this site plan meets those requirements. So it's basically a plug and play for the stormwater. We'll have some different inlets in the parking lot. We'll have some pipes that will be extended out to the building to pick up roof leaders. And then our snow storage areas along the north side of the parking lot, we'll probably place an inlet in there as well, so as water melts, it's not bleeding back onto the alley or onto our parking lot so that it can drain to a beehive grate. Parking, 21 new parking stalls, but it's a net gain of 18 because we're losing 3 in the existing parking lot. There's also a landscape island in that same area, and you can't really see it on the exhibit because there's some gray shading that kind of covers it up, but we're going to be moving that landscaping island to the south to basically meet those requirements that were part of the original phase 1 design. Garbage, the same garbage we'll be using, same site as the phase 1 development. It's at the northwestern corner of our proposed parking lot. It's got great sidewalk access to it, but we'll be providing some screening for that to get us back up to the current city standards. And then dry utilities, those would be your power, gas, phone, cable. All of those will be extended off of Woodland Place, the alley to the north, and we'll be bringing those into the building underground. So, any questions on the site?
Questions for Brandon?
Yeah, Brandon, on this fire suppression, are those sprinklers dry or wet?
It's my understanding they'd be a wet system. More than likely a wet system, yeah.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was
Oh.
from before.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other questions for Brandon? Okay.
Perfect. David's going to go over the site renderings and show you guys some beautiful graphics.
Okay.
I don't know, it'll kind of scroll click that. Got it. There you go.
This one. Okay, thank you. I'm David Kuhl. I'm an architect with Cushing Terrell. And I'll try to be brief here, but I have to tell you I'm really excited about this project. It's kind of rare to work on a project of this nature. It's very special. So I'll just run through a few things that caused us to do the things we did in terms of the design. I'll start on the site here. Generally some goals that we had, and Daniel's right, it's a tight site. But our goal primarily was to maximize units, and that's why you see 18 and then exactly that many available stalls. To do that, we played around with lots of different orientations of the building to try to get as many units as we can. In the end, the orientation you're seeing here is just by far the simplest. Keeping the parking close to the road, keeping it close to the existing parking lot allowed us to minimize the amount of space required for circulation on site, and then the building pushing it to that edge made the most sense geometrically. It also, though, did some other things that we liked because we studied variations on the site, and some of the goals we had there were to not crowd the existing buildings. One thing we didn't want to do with the building was put it in a location that actually caused some of the other units that are already on site to be less valuable or take away their views or take away their access to sunlight. So pushing the building as far east as we did allowed us to still allow those buildings to really be the high quality spaces they are, but then also give the new structure a lot of freedom for light and views as well. So those are some of the benefits of that. Let's see, we also endeavored to focus on some degree of outdoor recreation space or just a courtyard or something, and with the space we had left. Oftentimes when you do projects like this, you're so tight on parking and building and sidewalks, you don't have anything left, for amenity spaces, or it ends up being a strip of land somewhere that qualifies as green space. We have a legitimate courtyard in the middle here that is at the entrance to the facility that is something everybody will pass through as they come and go from the parking lot. I think it's a really a great amenity, something we were shooting for. And as far as trees, I can all but guarantee we'll have at least 11. Whether or not they stay alive is up to Daniel, but I'm assuming we can figure out a way to do that. So yeah, I think there'll be more than 11 trees. That certainly will be the goal. I agree with you. Let's go ahead and green up as much as we can. I think we have plenty of opportunity to do that. Let's see. The other thing that we wanted to do, and you'll see this in the imagery that comes up, is to harmonize with the architectural character of what else is there, particularly phase one. And you'll see kind of how we did that. We didn't want to match the architecture because the buildings are a little bit different. We just wanted to essentially harmonize with them. The last thing I'll say about the site, and I think Wendy and others touched on this, it is a really, really wonderful location. We love this location because of its access to Wisconsin. I think folks, we're hoping to incentivize them, and you'll see how with some bike storage and things to hopefully hop on a bike or just walk to work or wherever it is downtown or up the Wisconsin corridor. We're hoping it's a very perfect location for workforce housing. Let's see, I'm going to jump to, if I do this right, Brandon. Aha, so if you're seeing that, I just had a couple images of the existing facility that we're building off of in terms of character. Great buildings, high quality, good materials, long lasting. I think they're great. We didn't do these original buildings, but I can tell you the architect did a good job, really good job. A lot of movement, a lot of color and things like that. So we were looking to adapt the new buildings to look and feel similar. And so as you move to some of the imagery here, this is an image that you can kind of see an aerial view from sort of the northwest-ish looking down on it. So in terms of materials, probably similar materials, durable, probably cementitious materials and asphalt shingle and maybe some accent metals, if you can see my pointer there. These roof pieces might be a accent metal material and things like that. So we mix up the materials but keep it fairly simple. Let's see. As far as fun, by the way, fun facts, I'll give you some about that if you didn't know. 18 units for sure. It's probably, the plan is showing a combination of studios, 1s and 2 bedrooms, probably, hopefully 3 studios, 3 2s, and about 12 1-bedrooms is kind of the target currently we're looking at. 5,000 square feet per floor, about 15,000 square feet total for this. And yes, about 38 foot 2 inches or something like that. That was the goal. And the reason we're doing that, you can see we're vaulting up. I'll move on to the next one here. Vaulting up the roof a little bit to that height, and then probably hoping to add these sort of dormers, if you will, that would actually sort of bring the scale down. When you bring the roof down like that, it almost looks like a 2-story building with dormers on top. Another way to do it, of course, is bring a 3-story walls all the way up and then just put the roof on like a hat. But we think this is a lot more animated version to do that. It just again, we like the idea of scaling it down because as then this building, as it transitions to Wisconsin and the scale comes down to Wisconsin, this building should help to do that and yet be 3 floors. Let's see. Last few things we wanted to talk about where you're seeing on the side here, and I'll kind of point at it if I can. Right over here, you're seeing a little shed form, and you're seeing another one over here, and maybe the next image shows that better. We'll see. There's another view of it. Those little sheds, not only do they bring, again, you drop the vertical scale down, we pop out these guys, and they help to scale the project down to more pedestrian, but it's also shelter. Those are little shelters for bike storage. I don't know exactly how many bikes will fit in there, but we're hoping to put a bunch in there because, again, the intent is to incentivize and really push the idea of pedestrianism for this location. And so this is just one more way to make it easier for people to bike. I think that's about all I have other than to say, oh, one more interesting thing, and then I'll be quiet. This is a really interesting opportunity because the site forced us to squeeze this building to be narrower. Typically, you'll see an apartment structure being unit, hallway, unit, oftentimes, or something like that. It's usually a unit on both sides, one unit on each side of the building. This is tight, and so actually what we're doing here is it's a stair, and then it's a unit, and that's all, and then we'll do that again. So that means that each one of those units actually has exposure to both sides of the building, which is really quite rare for an apartment. That means that individual unit, there might be a kitchen on one side with a window, living room on the other side with a window, and if that happens, you can open the windows and the breeze blows through. You get sunlight in the morning, sunlight in the evening. It's quite rare for apartments. Really, really unique. They're going to be really, really nice units as a result of that. That was driven by again, it's driven by the requirements of the dimensions of the site, forced us into that solution. I think it became a benefit. And I think that's all I have for you, other than to tell you we're really excited about the project. It's really, really cool, really unique, and so happy to answer any questions you have for us, but sure appreciate your support.
Okay, any questions for David? Okay, go ahead, Scott.
I drive by this daily. Sure. I live in the neighborhood, and it's extraordinary. I noticed that phase one, I think it has solar on the roof. Is that?
It does.
Do you have any plans for that in phase two?
Go ahead. We're looking at it.
Yeah, we're going to study it, and we'd like it to be solar ready. I know that the first phase got a grant, I believe, from the Community Foundation to go solar. So with the east-west, I think it would be a good opportunity at least to get, and there's actually the south-facing pitch. I think that would probably be the best spot for it. So we're going to study it with these guys for the next phase and hopefully build it into just the standard budget. But if we need to have it on as come along, have it ready to at least be solar.
What does the solar do? Is it electric, water?
It's electric.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for David? Go ahead, John.
I think it's for this fellow. I think you mentioned there's 18 units, 6 at 60% AMI, 6 at 80% AMI, and 6 at 95% AMI.
That's our target, yeah. So that's where, in the 95, so the Cold Trust multifamily homes, the threshold, 75% of the units have to be 95% of the AMI or lower. So if we met that threshold and then did 4 at, say, 120, that brings the average AMI for the whole site close to like 100% of the AMI, which for us felt a little bit high for just our first Housing Whitefish project. So our goal is to keep it lower at about 80, which is a little bit more the demographic and the target that we're looking for.
Are you committed to these numbers?
So that's our target, right? So it will depend ultimately on what we, if we move forward with the Cold Trust application and if we get approved with that, whatever we put in that application, we will have to be tied to. So, there's kind of the idea of, well, do you just go to the highest threshold to not pigeonhole yourself and have some more flexibility? But we also want to make a commitment, of course, to the community to serve the population that we're intending this to go for. So, yes, our target for the organization is at 80%. That's really, really our goal.
So I did some math, rounding things off very roughly. So for the 60% AMI, that comes out to a rent of about $900 a month?
Yeah, with the utility allowance, it's probably for a studio
Plus utilities,
for the studio, I think it's like $883.
Okay,
would be the
and
studio.
for the 80% AMI, I got near something like $1,250 a month?
Yeah, right around there, maybe a little bit
And
less.
for the 95% AMI, it's $1,500 a month.
Yeah, and that would be for probably the 2-bedroom would be on the highest. Yep.
Well, those are fantastic rents.
Yeah.
That's very, very good.
Yep.
I
So-
don't quite understand how you can do it, but
Well,
Whatever.
the way we'll do it is by raising money privately.
Yes.
So, you know, just to step back, the developers that are doing it for profit, the rents that they're charging make up for the whole project and all the debt. By keeping rents lower, we don't make as much money, and so we have to fill that in elsewhere. So that just means we have to bring more equity to the project and more capital up front. So if we have a higher loan from the state, then we'll have to go with some of those higher income levels, which would mean higher rents. So,
but it can't be over the 100% AMI.
so again, it will depend a little bit on the funding. If we go again with the coal trust, it would be 75%. So 14 of the units would have to be under 95% of the median income. And our target would probably be to keep all of them at that. But yeah, we'll see once we kind of get down to it. If we need to have 4, that could go up to say 120 to make up some of the difference, to bring in a little bit more income to subsidize the 60% units.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. So it's a puzzle.
Scott, you have a question? Okay. Any other questions for Daniel or the development team? Okay, thanks, guys. All right, if you are here to speak on this matter, please, well, we haven't heard from Eric Mulcahy. We should welcome him to our first Whitefish Community Development Board meeting. For those of you who don't know, Eric's been around a long time. He was the original, weren't you the original planner for Whitefish? One of them, yeah. So welcome, Eric. It's good to see you. Anybody wish to speak on this matter? Nobody? Okay, we will close the public hearing and go back to the board for a motion. Or further questions.
I'll make a motion to recommend WPUD 2303 with conditions as proposed by the staff
Okay, for approval?
for approval.
Okay.
Yeah, to recommend.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Beckham, seconded by Middleton. Any further discussion on the matter? Okay, those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Those opposed, nay? And that does pass unanimously. Thank you. It's exciting that we're
Great
getting
project.
another.
Thank you so much.
Getting another great project going over in there. That's where high density needs to be. Okay, our last item on the agenda tonight is WSUB 24-01, a request by the City of Whitefish to amend Title 12, the subdivision regulations. This one would be Wendy as well.
Yeah, this one's a very, very simple one. When we created this new board, the Community Development Board, we took Board of Adjustment and Planning Board out of all the different regulations, and this is the last amendment to that, is removing the term Planning Board from the subdivision regulations and putting in Community Development Board. So that's pretty much everything that is in there. I did notice a couple of housekeeping items. We changed, as you recall, the name of the subdivision preliminary plat waiver to administrative, and that was a state law change, and I found a couple of references to waiver, so that is also being changed. But otherwise, those are the only 2 changes. That's it.
Okay. So does this mean that the planning board never existed? And it sounds almost a little Orwellian when we
Still
remove
on the
all
webpage.
references to.
It'll forever be on the webpage.
Okay.
They're disbanded.
Okay. Any questions for Wendy? Okay. We will open the public hearing. Anybody here to speak on this matter? Okay, we will close the public hearing and ask the board for a motion.
I'll move approval.
Move to approve WSUB 24-01.
Correct.
Okay.
I have it in front of me.
Okay. Just need a second. Okay. Moved by Scott and seconded by Phil. Any further discussion? Those in favor, aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that one passes unanimously as well. Matters from the board. Any matters from the board? for city staff? No? Okay. Any matters from?
Well, we do
oh, go
have
ahead,
the
Phil.
graphics to consider.
Yeah, we're going to do that right after we adjourn this meeting. Or well, right before we adjourn this meeting, I guess.
Go back to your work session. Yeah, I was just going to say at our next our community development board. Sorry, this is going to take me a while. We have invited staff from Department of Commerce. Their what is it again? Community Technical Assistance Program. It's the office that provides technical planning assistance. They provide grants. I think a lot of their training and planning and assistance is for the smaller communities that don't have professional staff. You know, they have like a city clerk that does everything. But one of the planners is going to come up here and do a training for you folks. So if there's anything that you're dying to know or training that you'd love to have, any questions, burning questions, planning questions that you'd like to have her address in her training, that'd be great. But I think we only have one item on the agenda next week, and we'll have a work session with Alan ahead of time. So I think we could adjourn to the conference room and have her do the training. So.
Okay. Do we have a work session beforehand at the next month's meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll meet at 5 again next month? Okay.
Yep.
All right, great. So keep that in mind if you have questions or concerns that you want to bring up to the Community Technical Assistance Program person.
Yeah.
We can do that. Any other matters from staff? Okay, so when is our next meeting?
February 15th.
February 15th. I will be out of town. Yes, I will be out of town for that meeting, so Whitney, you'll be up. Anybody else know that you will not be here for that meeting? Excuse me. Okay, and we will have a work session beforehand with updates to the growth policy stuff.
Yeah, we'll be talking about the visioning and kind of what your roles will be for that.
That's what it'll be. We'll be
Okay.
going through the agenda for the visioning, so I can always catch you up on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go back to what we needed to cover for tonight. And that is, I've lost it. Where is it? We need to make a decision about the cover art.
Two of
and
4 dates on the.
2 of 4 dates.
Two
There are
of
the
4
Okay.
dates, which one works for you and that you can commit to?
Okay, so let's just start, we'll start with Whitney. Which 2 dates can you commit to?
I will commit to Wednesday, February 21st, and Thursday, February 22nd.
Okay, keep in mind that those 2 meetings will be the same, right?
It's identical sessions, and we're only gonna choose 2 of those 4 dates. So we just wanted to see which one works for all of you, but they're identical.
All 4 of them are identical?
There's only gonna
Okay.
be 2. We're giving you 4 dates to choose from.
Oh, I see.
There's only 2.
Okay.
That's, I guess, maybe I wasn't super clear on that. So if you guys wanna go on February 1st, 21st, and 22nd, you can all do that, that's fine. But there's only gonna be 2 nights.
Okay.
But it's like if you can't make it on,
sessions are
it's like if you
identical.
can't make it on Wednesday, you can make it on Thursday for the citizens. But you can come to both if you want, because it's gonna be the same thing on both nights.
Okay, gotcha. All right.
Different people in the public.
So you want us to commit to 1 date then?
Well, at least. If you
At
can come to
least
2,
one.
that's great, but
Okay.
we
All
need
right.
help.
Okay, all
I
right.
would like to commit to only 1 date. No, just-
Okay.
No, I can potentially be at the 21st and 22nd.
Okay, so those 2 dates work best for you. Scott?
Yes.
Same?
The
Okay.
21st, Scott?
I think I'm flexible for both of those, so I could, if we do the 21st and 22nd, I could do those. John?
I would prefer the Wednesday dates.
Wednesdays? Okay, so the 21st. Okay. Okay. And John?
Yay, so we have almost a split then,
Okay.
22nd.
So what we don't want to have happen is everybody show up on
That
the
means we're gonna make
21st
Toby
and
go to the
nobody-
one we need since he wasn't here.
Okay, Scott? Okay. All right, so it looks like 21st and 22nd are our dates. And then let's just make sure that we don't all show up on the 21st and nobody shows up on the 22nd. So if you can do either, it sounds like you 2 are 21st for sure. And then if you can do either, maybe we should do you want a firmer commitment than that?
We could firm that down
we
at the
have
work
2
session,
dates.
but ideally, we'd like to have half and half, or all of you, both of them, either one, but I don't want to have like one at one and then 5 at the
Exactly.
other.
That's what I'm trying to prevent.
Yeah. Well, I think I heard Scott and Whitney said the 21st, and I think I heard you were the 22nd? Oh, okay.
They said both. Which would you rather?
Whitney's keeping score here for me.
Which one would you rather do? Okay, so that's 3 for the 21st. Scott, can you do the 22nd? Yeah. Okay, so we got 1 for the 22nd. I'll come on the 22nd. 22nd. Okay, so then there's 3 for the 22nd, and Toby can go to either one. And if you can come on Wednesday and Thursday, that would be preferable. And that would, but we do have it set up so there'll be at least 3 of us there on the 22nd.
That is the hope, yeah. And it's going to be here. We'll have tables set up, but
Okay.
again.
All right.
And it's going to be fun, yeah.
And it's going to be fun.
This is the fun part of the growth policy before everybody hates me.
Yeah, it's before there's all the
This is
words that we
before
have to
everybody
read.
hates
Yeah.
me.
We just get to talk to people at this
They're
one.
preparing to hate me at that point.
Then we have to read everything after that, right? Yes,
So that
John.
would be an hour before the meeting?
No.
There's no meeting.
These
on
are
that
not
night.
on plan, no.
These are just the visioning sessions.
Separate nights.
It's the beginning of our visioning session. Yep, so you don't have, there won't be a packet or anything for this. You just show up.
5:30 to 7:30. There'll be a flyer that I will send out, and I'll make sure it includes you on that.
Okay. We got that squared away. All right, next thing is the cover art. We have a couple different options.
So remember the first one? That was the original one, right? They didn't like I think the houses all being identical and being tall. Artist gave us 2 options, which was very nice of her because she could have just told me to pound sand. So
I like the Vision Whitefish 2045 one on the left.
Okay. Okay.
Wow.
The only, I hate
I
to.
vote for the one on the right.
You want the one on, okay.
I like the one on the right as well, because
oh
I
my
like
God,
the,
we're gonna be at a tie
I
there,
like the
Steve.
fishing, but
Well, I prefer the one on the left. It has more of what's in Whitefish, except there's no mountain bike or bike riding. There's no bike on there. There's a lot of things that we have a fly fisherman and a skier, but we don't have a biker. So, but I prefer the one on the left just because it has more of the character of our town in it.
Steve, you could ride on the bear.
Yeah, okay, just put a person on the bear.
Anyway, the artist
If you could ask, I mean.
The artist is here.
Oh, you're the artist?
Jenna, do you want to say anything?
Okay. Okay. So we have 1, 2 for the right. Who else? Anybody else prefer the one on the right? No. Okay. So I think it's a 4-2 vote. If we don't get the bike rider on there, it's probably okay. It would just be kind of neat to honor the trail system that we've built here over the last 20 years because it's actually one of the big amenities that we have in town that, brings people here. We hear it all the time. So, but I don't want to be too controlling or picky. Okay, is that fair then? Do you want an official vote? Do we need an official vote on that?
Probably, sure, yeah.
Okay, for those of you who prefer the one on the left, raise your hand. Okay, for those of you who prefer the one on the right. Okay.
More bears.
It has more bears.
More bears.
It's more pastoral. I like them both. I really
Yeah,
do.
it's greener.
So just note that Whitney and John voted for the one on the right for the minutes, please. Is that an official act of the planning board, or does the city council have to agree to that?
You're the ones that
sorry, the
Prepare
Whitefish
the growth
Community
policy.
Development Board. It's a
I was
mouthful.
not planning to bring that to them for them to vote on it, since you're the ones that prepare the growth policy.
Okay, they can veto.
So this I'll
veto
add,
the
this
cover art
will,
later.
yeah, we'll see what, if the artist wants to add a bike. She's already done way more than she needed to. And then I'll try to figure out a way, or we can try to figure out a way to make a banner that go on the top of the website for it. I can
Okay.
do some Photoshop stuff or something.
All right, great. All right. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for working with us. Anything else from anybody? Okay, I just need a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
All right. All right, moved and seconded, and we are adjourned.